Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome once again to the Secrets of the High Demand Coach podcast. And I am here with yet another high demand coach, and that is Phil Fraser. Phil went from a kitchen table startup with zero investment all the way to a multi-million pound sale to a publicly traded company 18 years later. As part of that journey, he was a regular keynote speaker. He was an industry conference chairman and a creator of his sector's industry awards. Well, today, Phil works with ambitious small and medium enterprise owners as a business sounding board. I hope to unpack that a little bit with you here Phil. But he helps leaders to discover that it does not have to be lonely at the top. So, Phil, again, I'm so excited to have you here. Before we got on, I told Phil that his smile has already warmed up my day. So, if you're listening to this, go back and watch the video because it's infectious. You'll find yourself smiling very quickly. But Phil, I want to talk about this business sounding board and what you're doing to help your clients. But before we get there, I'd love to just kind of unpack this story a little bit. Tell us what you were doing before becoming a business sounding board, before coaching, and how did that ultimately lead to what you do now?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for the big build up there. Hope we don't let people down. So I launched accidentally, and it's a very long story about the accident, but we accidentally launched what became the world's leading comparison website for online bingo. So we compared and listed all the online bingo sites, initially in the US, then in the UK. And I went through all the stuff that every business owner goes through, from launch to growth to all the problems that are along the way, all the hiccups, problems with suppliers, problems with advertising, problems with marketing, problems with staff, all those sorts of things until 18 years later. And again, there's a long story to that, but 18 years later, somebody came along and said, here's a bag of money. And I said, here's the keys. That's the quick version of it.
Awesome. So you've had this tremendous success story as a CEO founder yourself. How does that end up translating into the work that you do now?
Yeah. So you read all these business books, and they're all about launch, growth, sale, exit, all that sort of thing. But nobody writes the next chapter, which is, what do you do next? I'm too young to go and play golf and just retire to Miami or something like that. So I came out the other end and really didn't know what I wanted to do. And somebody said to me, "Hey, you should be a business mentor." And my first response to that was, "Well, who the hell's going to listen to me? I was just making it up as I was going along," which business owners will recognize. And then over time, I had friends and contacts who had businesses, and they were coming to me and saying, "Hey, Phil, can you just help me with this idea? Can you help me with that idea? Or I'm thinking of selling. What does that look like?" And people seem to get some benefit out of it. And I was thinking, "Oh, I think I know what I'm talking about here." And it's that classic thing of, you don't understand you're learning stuff until you say to somebody, "Oh, everybody knows that." And I go, "Oh, I didn't know that." So I decided, okay, well, people seem to be getting some benefit out of this advice. So, hey, why don't I try and start charging people for it? That sort of imposter syndrome part of me sort of didn't want to call myself a mentor. And I always think a coach, the difference between coach and mentor, I always think a coach is somebody who helps you do a skill better. So like a sales coach or a presentation skills coach, or, you think of sports coaches, make you run faster, hit the ball further, that sort of thing. So what I realized was I was being a business sounding board. I was asking questions. I wasn't giving answers. From what I'd done, that whole it's lonely at the top, which it is when you run your own business. You don't have somebody to go, "Hey, Scott, I've got this idea. Does this sound really stupid?" Or, "I've got this problem, I don't know how to solve it." Or, "I've got this opportunity, I don't know how to maximize it." Or, "I've got this problem with a member of staff," or all the shit that comes with running a business. You don't, sometimes, a lot of the time, you haven't got somebody to discuss that with. So that's what I offer, and that's how it came about.
Yeah. And it's so true. I remember I had this kind of unique experience where I co-founded and kind of sat in the COO role for a company for several years, and then moved up to the CEO role, and the CEO stepped out of active daily business. And so like sitting in both seats, I didn't expect it to be a big change because you have a good COO, they're typically kind of acting in that CEO capacity, before you actually recognize it. So what I did from a day-to-day basis didn't change, but that feeling of loneliness was night and day difference. It so surprised me, and it shows up in really little subtle ways. People who used to be my fellow, executive team members were now my executive team members, and you're right. Like there's just something different about it. A lot of what founders face is what leaders face, right? A lot of what founders face is what business people face. But there's an element to it that is very, very unique, that when you're sitting at the top of the org chart and you're also in that owner seat, right? And most, small, medium enterprises don't have an active board of any sort. And it is that it's just structurally, it can be a very, very lonely place. And I would, looking back on my time, I would say that's probably the biggest lie out of all of them that I believed for a very long time, that to be on top was to be alone. And so I love this idea of coming alongside business owners as a business sounding board. And you kind of tease that out a little bit, but tell us, what does that actually mean? What is a business sounding board?
Okay, so the simplest, and you can come at this sort of from one end or the other end, but often clients will come to me because they're stuck. And they might be stuck for different reasons. They might be strategically stuck. They might have a big problem, or they may want to get to the next level but don't know how to do it. A lot of what I talk about sometimes is, what got you here won't get you there. So we've got to, I know, $1 million turnover. How do we get to 2? How do we get to 3? How do we get to 5, 10, whatever it might be? And one of the beauties, or one of the sort of key aspects of being a business owner is usually you've got a bit of ego because conceptually you've said, hey, I can do it better. Give it here. I'll do a better version of it. But that then clashes with having to hold your hand up and go, I need some help. So, the business owner or the leader has to get to the point where, as you said, it feels like it has to be lonely at the top, but it's not a sign of weakness to say I need some help. It's actually a sign of strength.
Yeah.
None of us have all the answers. So why don't I speak to somebody who's been there and done it and got the battle scars and can help me? And the beauty of my role is pretty much the same things come along all the time. So when you're sat there, you're sat there as CEO and you think, oh my God, I'm the only CEO who doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah. All the other CEOs don't know what they're doing as well. But they've got a problem with their staff. They've got a problem with their strategy. Yeah. All is the same sort of things. So, and I had it as well. And a lot of what I do is I talk to people about things that I've done as well. So I've been in that chair where I've thought, shit, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm going to have to get somebody in. And sort of looking back on my career, I had at least 4 different external people who came into the business to help me. So it's not a sign of weakness to say I need some help. It's to say, right, we're going to get better.
Yeah. And I want to tease that out a little bit as well, because you're right. There's this basic requirement for entrepreneurs of going out and doing something that you shouldn't do, right? Like the odds are against you. Who actually thinks that they can do it better, right? Like there's a little bit of a I got this figured out that's necessary to succeed, but then it can get in the way as well. So how do you discern that? Like, this is the magic of an entrepreneur to go out and do things that, quote unquote, shouldn't be done or shouldn't be possible. And what is the narcissism of the entrepreneur, right, that needs to be kept in check? How do you draw that line?
I think from my point of view in my business, I think that my clients have self-filtered in that they wouldn't come to me until they've decided, right, I don't know everything. I've got to put my ego in the box a little bit. I've got to drop the narcissism. I need some help. So it becomes self-selecting. I think it hits people in the face when they get to that point where they say, I don't know what I'm doing here, or I'm stuck. It's usually stuck in lots of different ways. But it's often simple things that cause that trigger. So I've had clients who come to me and said, I've just fallen out of love with my business. It's such a pain in the arse. I need some help. or people who've said, I want to grow the business, I don't know how to do it. Or even, I want to put a plan in place to exit the business. You've done it. What do I need to put in place? But what I always do with all my clients, whatever they come to me with, is I start with something that is sort of borrowed from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, which is one of his habits. And it's a brilliant business book. If you haven't read it, everybody should read it. Anybody who's listening to this, watching this, read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. One of them is start with the end in mind. Yeah. So I start with clients and say, okay, what does perfect look like in a year's time? And be like, oh, that's a really simple question. And you go, no, what would be perfect? And they go, I don't know, $5 million sales. And you go, okay, let's put a plan in place to deliver that. What do you need to do that? They go, well, I'll need, more products. I'll need more production capacity. I'll need a new sales director, whatever it might be. You go, okay, if that's the case, what do you need to do to put that in place? And you just drill down. I have a 5-step plan that I use, which I call the Fraser 5-step. So very childishly, when I write it, I can write FFS. It doesn't work verbally, it works written. And it just waterfalls down to minutiae. And you go, right, okay, you flip the whole plan upside down and you start at the bottom and it leads to where your target is. And again, a lot of what I do feels very simplistic. It's just me looking from the outside in, and the business owner, as many of us are as business owners, is too close to the business to see the problem.
Yeah.
Or the person that they're getting advice from has usually a subconscious bias that, using another phrase, is nobody will tell you your baby's ugly on a business perspective. So that's just a really shit idea. That's a shit problem. I don't say that, but and this is where I don't think I'm a coach or a mentor, because I ask questions and bounce it back to the client, and the client comes up with the ideas, and the client comes up with the answer. The client goes, you're right. That is whatever it is, shit idea.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the question was. Did I answer the question?
You did. Yeah. I think that's, I think that's helpful. There's another element that kind of keeps popping up, and I know it's part of my story, and I hear it kind of in undertones in what you're sharing is, I thought that to have a good team around me was enough. Right. And what I've found both with my team and with working with others is, even if you have a great team, there tend to be these two kind of equal but opposite, follies in the team, right? That show up not all the time, not systemically, but you kind of get this, this roller coaster, if you will. One is no one will tell you your baby's ugly, right? It's like you got a bunch of people who think that you're amazing, right? Like they might say no every once in a while, but fundamentally they think you're right. He's had all this success. He's had more success than I have. He must be right. And there's just a limit to their ability to challenge. And there's also the agency of, if I push back too hard, like my job might be on the line, right? Like that's just there, whether we want it to be there or not, it is. The other side of it is you'll find folks who go out and they try and solve the lonely problem or the insight problem by bringing in someone who's maybe been there, done that, or from a bigger organization come in, and you get this person who's almost too big for the role, right? And they say no to everything. And with both of those, the yes to everything, the no to everything, it's very difficult to discern the truth, again, from the inside of the organization. So again, I love this idea of coming in, being that sounding board from outside the organization, right? You're not enamored by the prowess of your clients, right? Like you've seen it all. You're also not put off by the difficulties of that role and their shortcomings as leaders. So I love that you're able to do that. I think that's fantastic. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit. There's a question I like to ask everybody, and it's this. What's the biggest secret that you wish wasn't a secret at all? What's that one thing that you wish every single founder leader listening today knew?
There's two, actually. There's one piece I always tell everybody about, and there's something when you asked the question to me, I thought, my first is go with your gut. In all your businesses, obviously do the research, find the data, and then if your gut's saying go over there, go over there. For two reasons. Number one, if you go over there and it works, fantastic. If you go over there and it doesn't work, okay, hold your hands up. I was wrong, but you got some learning. But if you don't do it, you'll just spend the rest of your life going, I wonder what would have happened if I'd done that. And it's interesting. I've been to a networking event this morning, and somebody said exactly the same thing: follow your gut. The other thing is something somebody once told me, because I suffer with imposter syndrome, and oh my God, who am I to be here in lots of issues? And actually, is nobody's thinking about you that much, because you think, oh my God, what am I wearing? What are they going to say? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I do the wrong thing? People aren't bothered.
Yeah.
People are just, get over yourself. No, I'm not saying everybody's a big head and a big I am. It's just we worry so much about what people think and what people say and what most people are not bothered because they're thinking about what people are thinking about me, what am I doing, and they've got 100 other things. What's going to, I've got to pick my daughter up from school. What's for dinner, and I'm seeing the accountant tomorrow, and the car's broken. And you're sitting there thinking, do you think this shirt looks a bit shit? They're just not bothered. So get over yourself.
It's so true. And I think especially for, those in our industry, in our profession, it's such a big deal, right? And the more like imposter syndrome is just there. I mean, 100% of the time it's there. It's either lurking in the background or it's right in the front and center. But you're right. Like so much of what we, waste energy and emotion on is just completely irrelevant. I know that hit home for some folks, and I appreciate you sharing. It's a vulnerable thing to share in a setting like this, but it's powerful, and it needed to be said. So thank you for doing that. One other question. I'm actually going to have you shift gears one more time here. And I'm going to have you take off your sounding board hat, if you will, put on your CEO hat, and talk to us a little bit at this stage in your career. What's the next stage of growth look like for you, both your business and you as a leader?
I think from me, I'm in a strange position in that, I've sold the business. The money drive is not there for me anymore. It doesn't need to be. So I want to do this because I enjoy doing it. I enjoy I like business. I enjoy business. I enjoy talking to people about business. I love listening to people about their businesses. So the driver for me is on one hand, I love what I'm doing and I want to be successful doing it. On the other hand, because that, and I'm like a lot of people, I wasn't money driven, but it's strange not having that shit, I've got to go to work on a Monday morning feeling, which is sometimes a negative, but it's also sometimes a positive.
Yeah.
So if I never have another client again, it's not an issue. But it is because I want to be, I want to be successful. I want to do what I want to do. So that's sort of one half of it. The other half of it is, coaching is a very personal thing. You know this way better than I do. And it's about connecting with the right person. And, there's no point having a coach or a sounding board or a mentor, whatever you want to call it, unless you connect and you understand and they're the right people. And the difficulty I've got is getting myself out there as awareness of me as a brand, which is one of the reasons I'm on here. And that's the difficulty. So I've got the difficulty of obviously build the brand, but I don't need too much work because I don't want to overdo it. But I haven't got that underlying I have to driver. So all those right. I've got all these things sort of moving around at the same time.
I think what's surprising to folks along the journey is how big the challenges are that are brought on by success. Right? Yeah, there's inside of a business, there's the complexity of I've got 50 people that now rely on me to put food on the table, right? Like that's a big deal. And even in the stage where you're stepping away, right? You're stepping out of call it becoming the visionary founder again, right? Of moving out of, you're building your thing, you're running your thing, you're selling your thing to how do I actually go and build for others? What do you do when you don't need to do anything? Right? It's really challenging. It's, how fast would you drive if there were no speed limits and the cops didn't watch? It's getting to the place where it's like, oh no, I actually have to be fully responsible for my own actions, right? The freedom of having the choice to do whatever comes with the responsibility to manage that choice well. And it's, you're striking on just a really, really big issue that I think a lot of people don't anticipate. And a lot of people don't really have a whole lot of grace for either. They're like, Why is that a problem? You have it so good. And it goes back to that whole, like, you can end up being lonely all over again in such a very different way. So, Phil, just fantastic. Love what you do. Love how you do it. Love just the heart and desire behind all of it as well. I know that's coming through for folks who are watching and listening. How can they find more out about your work and what you do?
Okay, the easiest way to find me is to go to my website, which is philfraser.co.uk. Don't go to .com, because philfraser.com is a medieval costume company. So if you see like pictures of Robin Hood or that sort of stuff, that's not me. You're on the wrong place. It's philfraser.co.uk, or search me out on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn most days. And, if there's anybody out there who wants to talk, happy to talk to anybody whenever they want, or search out my newsletter. You'll get 5 great free articles about running a business and all sorts of stuff. So sign up to the newsletter as well. And you see me write nonsense now and again. That's awesome.
And so for those of us enamored by your accent on this side of the pond, that's Fraser with an S. So PHILF, what is it? PHILFRASER, right? Did I get that right? .co.uk, not com. We don't need medieval garb. So Phil, just a tremendous, tremendous time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing. And for those of you listening, your time and attention mean the world to us. I thank you so much for being here as well. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.